Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to the Solvable Mysteries podcast. My name is Yuras, and as every week, I'm joined by my co host, Glenn Highcove. How are you feeling, man?
Hello, happy Friday for me, Saturday for you. Um, Doing all right, you know, staying busy for sure. It's definitely the weather's warming up, and I don't know. I think I'm almost too busy now going into the year. But yeah, I mean, definitely excited to talk about the case that we're talking about today. It's interesting because it's such a big case that I think maybe everybody will like to hear our take on it.
Exactly, man. I feel like it's overdue at this point. This case that is, and yeah, I'm very excited to talk about it. I know it's like a really fascinating case. I know that I if I had to guess, I'd say over probably 90% of our audience already know about this case. But initially going into this case, let's just obviously mention what we're talking about. Well, we're talking about the Chris Watts case, the Watts family murders. We'll get into what actually went down and give our take on the whole thing. You know, when we do like true crime cases, like of known crimes that have been solved at this point, it's also it's like how should I put it? It's usually hard for me to prepare in regards to what we're actually going to be talking about because like the case is solved and you would think that there is no mystery, but as I've been looking into this case more and more, I realized that there are actual mysteries here, and not even like psychological mysteries. There are like literal like weird mysteries here in this case, and I can't wait to discuss them. But I don't know, before we do that, I think we could bring everyone up to date to what happened. So, this is a story about a man called Christopher Lee Watts, and I mean, we know this information at this point, pretty much killed his entire family in a manner that is really hard to comprehend. Dude, before we jump into the initial story, you got any like initial like take on the whole case or how we want to handle it, and like a disclaimer or something like that?
Yeah, I mean it's such a fascinating case in a lot of ways. I mean, no joke. Dr. Grande, I mean, the amount of material in this thing is astounding. Dr. Grande has somewhere between 10 and 15 different videos about this topic. I mean, it's a lot of there's a lot of stuff to kind of get into, and it's almost like an enigma. Like you said, it's a puzzling case because there's a lot about it that is not typical of even this kind of somewhat rare kind of horrible crime where like there's profiles of these kind of crimes, and in some ways it kind of defies those usual stereotypes about it. And then the other thing I'll notice is I think this was something that kind of popped up on my radar here and there, and then like I think probably a year out from when it happened, you started to see a lot more material on like Netflix. Like YouTubers got all over it, of course. Like Netflix made a special, pretty interesting, I guess you would call it, documentary about it. There've been a couple different documentaries about it. But then the other thing I've noticed about it is, I was saying to you earlier, it's like a Rorschach test. It's like a Rorschach test where those ink blot tests where you show somebody an ink blot and you ask them like, well, what is that? What does this shape remind you of? And then whatever they say is sort of like projecting what it is that's on their mind. And I feel like that's what happens with this case is, I mean, there's no doubt this dude did just a horrible, heinous crime. Any way you look at it, there is no getting out of that. What's interesting is you still have people that actually take sides on this, and like, either are like, there's some people that actually defend him or say that, there's some sort of extenuating circumstances. So there's people that kind of victim blame, I guess you would say, with his wife Shannan, and then you have like you have no joke like an entire subreddit just dedicated literally to Shannan Watts, which is just determined to heap even more and more hate on someone who is already pretty horrible, Chris Watts and his family. And um, I'm a little bit astounded. I mean, even compared to some of the other cases we've covered, which have been really big cases with big followings and very passionate, um, let's say, followers of what's going on. This case, I think, is much bigger than like a week ago when we had decided to cover this. I don't think I truly realized, even having seen like the Netflix special and things like that, how much bigger this was than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, dude, it definitely makes sense. I think that's a good lead into it. Actually, as we were speaking, I think I also grabbed another really interesting piece of footage. I will want to like add it at the later parts of the episode. It's a really interesting thing that I've literally just found, and I think everyone's gonna be like, "What the hell is that?" But I'll just keep it as a secret uh, until we get to that part. And yeah, in terms of like the story, I think we could do it. So I think the story actually starts with not Chris Watts, but with his wife, Shannan, or maybe how they met, I should say. So Shannan, she had health problems. Now, I don't want to get into her health problems too much because that's not, why we're here today talking about this case. But she was going through a really bad time, like in I'd say, the late 2000s, and so. But in 2010, she receives a Facebook friends invitation from Chris. And at first, from what I've gathered, she was like hesitant to sort of accept the friend's request. But then she was like, I think, feeling really lonely. And she was like, what the heck? I'll just accept a friend's request. And then they start chatting, I assume. And, apparently one thing led to another. And 2 years in advance, on November 3rd, 2012, Shannan and Chris became husband and wife, and they married each other. It happened in Charlotte, North Carolina. Um, you know, 1 year in advance, we're jumping to 2013. On December 17th, their first child, Bella Watts, was born. Yeah, so the first child is born in Colorado. Shannan was so excited to have her first baby girl. She spent every minute thanking God and taking care of her precious gift that the Lord has blessed her with. And this is, I think, on the obituary. And it also says that she loved and cherished Bella very much. I mean, she always wanted to have kids, I assume, and she was really happy. Now, 2 years in advance, Chris's and Bella's second. Chris's and Shannan's, I'm sorry, second child, Celeste, was born. So that's Bella's sister. Her nickname was Cece. She was the younger daughter, and we also have some information that the thing is, Shannan was so excited to be able to have Cece because she had that whole health problem situation where she was battling lupus. But she was able to have the kid, so it was a fantastic time for the family. And we've seen a lot of, at least personally, I've seen the Netflix thing last night, and they show like them having a really good time. I want to stop here for like a few seconds. I mean, it seemed like everything was fantastic for the family. Actually, Chris seemed like a wonderful father. He always seemed to me to be engaged and things like that. But another thing we want to mention here is that during this time, because on the wedding footage and from the wedding of their marriage and things like that, Chris seems a little, I wouldn't say like overweight, but he doesn't seem like he's in the best shape of his life, like, you know what I mean. But During this period of him having kids with Shannan and things like that, and their life moving forward, he's getting really ripped and like in a really good shape. So I know, dude, you wanna unpackage that whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said it because I think if it had been just me, people would might say like, Glenn, why are you always talking about people's physical stuff? But I mean, the the dude's like in amazing shape. I almost I should just Google. I'm sure if I Google, there's probably like like Google gives you those suggestions. There's probably like a Chris Watts workout or Chris Watts diet, because the dude guy. I mean, apparently he was already a high school athlete, so maybe it wasn't so much to ask for somebody to get back into shape. But yeah, he definitely used to be dumpier for a while. He was overweight, and then you see him like with his shirt off in some of these pictures, and then I mean even when he does it when he's just got his shirt on, he's got like big old like Popeye forearms, and he looks super trim underneath that shirt. And me, like, I'm like a middle-aged guy with a pot belly. I'm not in terrible shape, but I definitely am embarrassed to show my stomach. And I'm sort of like, wow, like how did that dude get into that kind of shape and keep that figure? But then, like we talked about last week on Missy
Exactly,
Devers.
exactly.
Yeah. That's like sometimes a sign that, I mean, it isn't always right. Sometimes it's a positive sign, but sometimes it's also like all of a sudden things start happening around you and people start viewing you differently, and maybe opportunities open up that weren't necessarily there before. And that's a lot of temptation.
Right, exactly. On the same year as this is happening, the family actually files for bankruptcy. So, with the combined income of $90,000 in 2014, in addition to credit card debt, student loans, and medical bills, the couple file for bankruptcy that's happening in the month of June in 2015. So, I think just a month after their second child, Cece, was born, stating that their $3,000 mortgage and $600 car payments took up most of their $4,900 monthly expenses. Additionally, their homeowners association sues them at this point for some unpaid fees and things like that. So they filed for bankruptcy, and this was a very interesting situation for me. How do you file for bankruptcy and then get back on your feet so fast? Because let's just quickly jump to the home on the Google Earth that I guess the Watts family were staying at, and their home seems really nice. Well, obviously, from the street view, we can't really see that because of what happened. Now it's just the whole neighborhood is like blurry and seems like everyone's just moving out. Like it seems like a few homes like literally just vanished off the face of the earth. So the neighborhood is probably, I would assume the real estate prices have dropped to some extent in this neighborhood, but yeah, I mean, it seemed like a real nice house. So, what do you make of it, dude? Like, how do you go bankrupt, but then you get back on your feet so fast? That's like a motivational story to some degree.
Yeah, I'm not. I gotta watch what I say here because I know people will jump all over me, maybe rightfully so, if I say something inaccurate. In some cases, the point of a bankruptcy is to try to shield some of your assets and like the roof over your head from creditors. So sometimes, not always, and I think it depends on the state and some other stuff. That's actually like part of the reason why you do it is you're kind of telling creditors like, look, you're gonna just hollow me out, and there's nothing you can get out of me. So you work something out. But I mean, I also say the economy's been pretty erratic even during those years. So you're talking about a period where the market was kind of at the bottom for housing, and then it went up. And I'll tell you, even now, for me, like a year ago, for what I did for a living, I couldn't really find. That's why I had to look for other stuff to do because there wasn't jobs. And now it's like I'm fending. Like I've heard this from everyone. I'm getting like multiple queries a week now for work, and this is coming right after all the lockdown stuff. So yeah, stuff happens. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes yeah, it's just bad timing, and but by the way, though, what you've talked about already are some enormous strains in the marriage. I mean, I'll say also just having a couple of toddlers is already stressful, and they didn't really know each other. I don't know that long. I would say in terms of their marriage, at least. I mean, I don't know how much they were dating in that 8 years, between when she made that Facebook post, about when he sent her the invite on Facebook or whatever. But like, I don't know,
Yeah.
it's a lot of stress, and then the finance thing on top of that. I mean, it would be really
And
easy
the
switching on each other.
let's remember the health problems as well.
Yeah,
So it's like
yeah,
it's a lot. Yeah.
I mean, is it worth mentioning here, or teasing a little bit that you know e- that those things by themselves already would have been hard in a marriage, but apparently there were, even before they got married, some strained feelings, I guess you might call them, between Shannan and Chris's parents. So they didn't like her, and they didn't show up to the wedding.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think
yeah,
it's perfectly fine to mention that. I personally know about like the frictions that I think we will get into pretty shortly in the timeline, but we have to
yeah.
move a few years in advance. But before that, I mean, if you have some more detail regarding the friction between the parents before, like years before, I mean, you should definitely do it right now, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'll mention it. It's so funny because like you'll have something like this where you think, where you watch something. I watched something when I first heard about this case, and for some reason this one thing spent a good like 10-15 minutes on the beginning of the relationship, and said some stuff that I could never really find again except in some interviews afterwards that sort of touched on it again. So some of this is coming directly from an interview with Chris's mother after the fact. But yeah, apparently Chris had really pursued her, and I think one of the sources I watched said that really she had turned him down multiple times about getting married, and then eventually she kind of relented, and went forward with it. So maybe she had her own trust issues, or who knows, maybe she had some kind of feeling that maybe things wouldn't work out ultimately. But his family, and I'm not really clear what the dynamic is. There's a lot of like, hearsay and rumors about, well, his parents are toxic or whatever it is, from one side of the discussion. I would kind of wonder, because the way he was described is it almost, the way they talked about him, it was almost like how you would talk about like a mentally handicapped member of your family that
Wow.
you were, you know what I mean? I mean, that sounds pretty harsh, right? But like, imagine if you had a family member that had like, I don't know, Down syndrome or some other kind of cognitive impairment where you didn't feel like they were fully in control of their faculties, maybe, or that it might be easy to, like Marfan's, I don't know, one of these other syndromes
Yes.
where someone could take advantage of you. Yeah. So I guess they kind of worried that someone would take advantage of him, and apparently he was very passionate about the relationship, but it kind of felt like he was. I'm trying to think of a nice way to put it. Um, he was the weaker one in the relationship, I guess, that she
Yeah.
was controlling it. And apparently, she would say, just to put a fine point on it, she would say things in front of him and his mother that his mother didn't like. Like she would say, "Oh, he is never the kind of guy I would have dated," or like, "Oh, look at the way he dresses. He dresses like a skater," which I don't know if that's such a maybe his mom.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And that's where it gets into like, this is one of these times in this case that makes it so interesting, because
Yeah.
there's so many people whose accounts either they can't stand up for themselves now, like Shannon, she's not here now to give us her side of the story. But then you don't know, like, if this guy did this thing, then like what kind of family did he come from? So when they say something, you know what I mean? Do you take them at their word, or do you factor in that like their child did something really toxic and now they're kind of like almost defending him?
Right.
They are kind of defending him. So like,
Yeah.
how good are they? Yeah.
Exactly.
So
I
that's
mean,
yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I just want to quickly step in 2 points that I've managed to gather. Well, apparently, Shannan had a previous marriage, I believe, that like fell apart in a pretty, I would say, I don't know, the distressful manner or something like that. Where because this was on the Netflix thing where they showed her previous Facebook messages, and we will get into that right now pretty much, but. So yeah, so she had like a marriage that fell apart, and that was like a really emotional situation for her. So I think the trust issues came from that. The other thing is she also on one of those Facebook, I guess, posts, uh, herself, like this is her words, like she stated that she's like the dominant one in the relationship. So I mean, that's literally like her words. So I mean, that's the stuff that we can gather. I think at this point we should move a little bit further into the timeline. And one thing really interesting to me personally is the fact that apparently Shannan was also part of a pyramid scheme of sorts. Uh, she worked like by selling products. The products were called Thrive, and it was a multi-level marketing company called The Level. So from what I've gathered, I mean that's a pyramid scheme, right? I mean that's what it sounded to me. That's like a Herbalife type of pyramid scheme, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is, and it's funny because I mean, on one hand, like, no, you're right. Like those things, there's some issues, but like, it's funny. There's a lot of stuff though. Even like insurance brokerages and things like that have similar structure. And I'll tell you, one of the sales directors I used to work with, he said this only half jokingly, that that's kind of the case for a lot of sales. Like being a sales director is sort of like also being in a pyramid scheme because ultimately you're getting compensated not off of even your own sales, but the people working for you.
Yeah, yeah,
So, there's sometimes the pyramid's a little flatter,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean the issue is as long as it's not fraudulent, right? As long as you're actually selling real products, the real the awful as obnoxious as like sort of the Amway stuff and all that pyramid scheme stuff is, if you're actually selling a product, you're not really taking advantage of people that much because they know what they're getting in for. The real issue are like Ponzi schemes where there's no value at the bottom of the pyramid. You know what I mean? Where
Exactly.
ultimately,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
So
that's
yeah,
a
just clarify.
yeah, but that's a real good clarification, man. I'm really glad that you've said it now. Apparently, she was really good at it. Like one of the quotes that I've read, she was like making $80,000 per year doing that, and apparently Chris was making $60,000 per year working in the oil fields. Nearby. I mean, that's gonna come into play in the story. So I think she was doing really good, and she personally seemed like the person who would excel in such a corporation. You know what I mean? Like I personally probably couldn't do that because it's like I don't know, it's like just being around a lot of people and like selling stuff. It's like not my cup of tea. But like Shanann definitely seemed like the type of a person who would excel and make a lot of money doing that. She was posting on Facebook a lot. I think that was part of her business model to some extent, right? And I mean, we are right now jumping to the year when it all went down. That's 2018. So in the timeline, I want to stop at the month of May. It's May 5th, 2018. Shanann posts a Facebook Live video that's over half an hour long. Um, and Shanann muses about family life, and her quote is, I love waking up now on Saturdays and being able to enjoy my family. She's also on that video talking about being excited about the upcoming summer in Colorado. Her quote is, I believe that everything in life happens for a reason, and I also believe people are placed in our life for a reason as well. She lastly mentions on this video that Chris can be seen playing with the girls in the video. So 2018, Chris is still really engaged in the child's upbringing, and so then we move closer and closer, to August. But before that, we want to jump to June 11th of the same year. Shanann surprises Chris with the news that they're expecting. I've seen this video on, I don't think we want to post it right here because I think it has copyrights on the Nine News website, whatever. But I've seen this video, and I don't know. Have first of all, have you seen the video where Shannan sort of surprises Chris with the like, oh, we're having another kid?
No,
Yes.
no, I've seen some other
Yeah.
social media, but yeah, how does he take it?
I mean, I think it was super like scripted because like she just was wearing like a shirt. We did it again or something like that, and he comes into the kitchen and it's like a super weird. Like it seemed like super scripted. I think it was probably maybe part of the Facebook marketing business model that Shannan was doing, and Shannan was really good at it. I will add. Let's move. 6 days in advance, that's June 17th, Shannan posts a Father's Day message for Chris on Facebook. Her quote is, "Chris, we are so incredibly blessed to have you. You do so much every day for us and take such great care of us. You are the reason I was brave enough to agree to number 3, referring to Nico Lee, the unborn child that Chris Watts will eventually kill as well. From laundry to kids' shower, you are incredible, and we are so lucky to have you in our life. Happy Father's Day." Let's move in later on the same month. After receiving such a nice Father's Day message, I mean, Chris Watts does the rational thing and begins cheating on his wife with a woman called Nicole Kessinger. Now, Nicole Kessinger works also in the same company as Chris, and that's the Anadarko Anadarko Petroleum, but Chris was actually an operator of one of the sites where he will eventually dump the bodies of his kids in like fuel tanks. But in the same company, there is a woman named Nicole Kessinger, and she works for the environmental department. And I guess they just start cheating, like on Shannan and things like that. Now, shortly after Chris and Nicole Kessinger get into a physical relationship, Chris actually sees Kessinger about 4 or 5 times a week, and they start having some sort of a physical relationship, if you know what I mean. He tells her that he's almost divorced, but at this point, Shannan does not know of this. So he's definitely not almost divorced. Maybe in his head he's like almost divorced, but in factuality he's not. Later on the same month, while Shannan and the girls were out of town in North Carolina, because that was a weird situation. I want to stop here, but like shortly. I want to ask your opinion, dude. What was the whole situation with Shannan taking the kids, Cece and Bella, for like a North Carolina trip, but then him not going with them? Was it like work related, or was there like some sort of a drama between Shannan and Chris that led them to not going on the trip altogether? Like, how do you have any like more info?
I don't have any insights. I can only speculate, and I would speculate that either just financially, because I mean, Americans know this, but not everybody. Everybody else that doesn't live in America doesn't know this. We don't necessarily have a lot of vacation time here, and that I'm actually kind of surprised he's so low paid, by the way, for that petroleum job, because the whole point of petroleum jobs is you're supposed to get paid bigger money, but maybe he doesn't do something that's that important or that dangerous that it pays as much. But yeah, I mean, in a lot of jobs in America, you only get like 2 weeks vacation, if you even get that with your benefits. So it just may be that like they literally couldn't afford to be like 3 weeks off work with what he did. But like to your point, it could be a sign that he made up something like, oh, I gotta stay back and you know
Yeah.
make good times with my secret girlfriend. Oh, I gotta work. I got too much work to do over the field. But like, yeah, maybe they just can't afford to have this dude away for 3 weeks.
Exactly, maybe that's the case. So I think Nicole Kessinger and Chris Watts, they go on like a date where Nicole is also making Facebook videos. I mean, there's a lot of people making Facebook videos in this whole story. I mean, it seems like everyone had like a fascination with Facebook here, besides Chris, because you never see Chris making a video. Like he's being a sneaky little dude right now, and they go on this sand dunes, I guess, sort of a getaway or to like ride sand dunes with like snowboards, but just not on the snow, but on the sand. It was a weird situation, but Nicole Kessinger makes a video stating that, I'm really glad that I met you, and it's fantastic. And Chris is just like casually acting like he has no wife or no kids or nothing like that, and he's just sort of going on this date with Nicole. But on July 31st, Chris also flies to North Carolina to join his family. Now, from the Netflix show that I've seen, it seemed like it was frictions were starting, because apparently, when Chris flew to see Shannan and the girls, Shannan was sort of expecting some sort of physical intercourse to take place, but it never did, because Chris was with doing stuff with Nicole, so he not necessarily wanted to do anything anymore with Shannan. And Shannan was like texting one of her other girlfriends, stating that there's nothing happening between them, and she would like something to happen, but nothing's happening. And it was a stale vacation, to say the least, for everyone besides the girls, because the girls seemed like they were enjoying time spending their time with like Chris, because they're seen at the beach like enjoying the whole situation. It was like a nice little trip for the girls, at least. And this is gonna be really crazy when we actually talk about why he killed everyone, because he literally seemed like he was having such a good time with the girls. I mean, just get a divorce, dude. Why are you killing everyone? But let's keep that a little bit later on for the show. Now we're jumping to August 4th, 2018. August is the month when Shannan and the girls were murdered. So, but before that, on August 4th, Nicole Kessinger actually starts shopping for wedding dresses online. So just weeks after they started talking, we know this because of cell phone data. She started looking for wedding dresses online. So it's like this Nicole Kessinger woman also seemed pretty like strange to me, to be honest with you. Like, she was literally ready to like marry Chris. So what do you make of that?
I mean, it's so hasty. I I'm trying. I'm like biting my lips so hard, trying not to go on a rant about marriage and relationships like I do normally. But yeah, I mean, I don't. It's so strange because yeah, it doesn't for anybody that seems like a really short amount of time, and like no one's really thinking straight, and you don't know if it's because they're like stupid or because they're just kind of overcome by the hormones and us being animals, controlled to some extent by those hormones.
Yeah, yeah. We can move a few days in advance. That's August 9th. Shanann leaves on a business trip to Arizona, and I think she leaves with a friend, Nicole, but not Nicole Kessinger, obviously, with some other Nicole. But nevertheless, she leaves, but before she does, I think she tells one of her friends that she's having troubles with Chris. She had texted a friend uh, that she and Chris had their best talk yet before she leaves on her trip. She even drafts a handwritten letter to him. Now, was interesting. This was on the Netflix thing as well. Maybe this will play a part in the overall story and, I mean, rationale of why Chris did what he did. Because you remember that North Carolina trip, right, where Chris joined them like for 1 week, but just like way in advance in the whole vacation. Now, things were really bad, and they were sort of texting each other, like being mad at each other, like not necessarily like Shannan was mad at Chris, but Chris was just like sort of responding with like everything's gonna be okay, like forgive me, you know, and things like that. One thing to mention as well is on that trip, apparently Chris's mother offered, I don't remember which kid was it, like maybe it was Cece or maybe it was Bella, but one of them was allergic to some sort of substance. And Chris's mother offered one of the girls that were allergic to that substance ice cream that had that particular substance in the ice cream, and that could have potentially, according to Shannan, killed one of the girls. So you got any more information on that, dude?
Yeah, so it was believe it was a peanut allergy, which, like, peanut allergies are no joke. They can be so extreme that sometimes, if like somebody that has a peanut allergy is going to be on a plane, sometimes they'll actually have the peanuts removed from the plane, because even having like let's say the atomized particles of the peanuts in the air can be like
Wow.
potentially fatal to that person. I mean, to me, it always kind of blows my mind, because I'm like, how the hell did humans get through all these years? But I guess, peanuts weren't everywhere, so I guess that's why there's always something like that someone's allergic to, and it's not their fault. Um, but yeah, so this is like one of those points of contention, because you don't know like, you don't know what's true and who's being the unreasonable one, because the way she should learn. By the way, some of the names in this thing, both Shanann and her friend, I'm like, why can't people just have normal names? I don't.
Yeah.
Someone else, her friend spells like Nicole wrong with like a CK. I'm like, what's going on here? Yeah. So Shanann's version was that, like, she detected what was going on. That the mom was given, grandma was given, the daughter some ice cream with peanut butter chips in it, and she's like, "No, what are you doing? Like, that's potentially fatal." And her version of it was the grandma was like, "No, don't listen, little girl." Was it Cece, whoever it was? I know what's best. She just doesn't want you to have this. That was Shanann's version, and so, and no joke, it became like this huge blow up where she said, "You're trying to kill my daughter intentionally." And there's even like a letter that she wrote to Chris, when they were fighting about it, where she's like, "Your mother's evil," and like, she said that. So like, that's not. I don't think that's in dispute. That she
Wow.
actually, there's a letter. She's a letter where she tells Chris. So whatever else might be in dispute, or whatever you feel about this thing, this isn't saying what happened was justified, but it's saying that's a pretty bad family fight. And like, that's part of the tensions, is now this dude is fighting with like his family, and his family, the same ones that didn't show up to his wedding. So what happens is, after this big blow up, for whatever version you believe, and I'm sure that the parents probably have their own version, that like, oh, we didn't know, and this lady went off on us. That was the version I'd heard when I first heard about this whole thing, that that Shanann had like super overreacted and gone into like a big screaming fit already. Can I just interject one thing
Of
at
course.
this moment? In Shanann's defense, and it's going to be like a little bit controversial to say this, but I'm going to say it. Women, when they're pregnant, and this is on purpose because of nature, they tend to have a higher testosterone rate. There's a lot of stuff going on with your hormones. And anybody that disputes this either hasn't been pregnant or is in denial. I've had, no joke, two different coworkers, I won't say what level they were, lose their minds on me, and I wasn't doing anything that was, any stupider than what I normally do at work, for whatever level of stupidity that was. I've had my wife definitely was not her normal self when she was pregnant, and had kind of like a similar level of maybe tension about things, or reacted really strongly to things that, like, in retrospect, it's like, well, clearly you weren't feeling well. There was other stuff going on, but it's part of nature too, right? Because when you're pregnant, it's nature's way of having you like defend your young, right? So that's not,
Yeah.
it's not an abnormal thing to have strong emotional things. And I think that's kind of in her defense for whatever else may have been going on with her psychologically in general. Like, I get that she's trying to protect her kid, and maybe grandma was being stupid about like a fairly serious medical issue, but whatever it was, like, that's probably the worst timing ever for that kind of big throwdown family fight, in a situation where the family really didn't like her that much, and where he's already dealing with that. And now what happens is, on that same vacation, now like they don't even show up for the daughter's birthday, the
Wow.
grandparents. Yeah, so it's a big train wreck.
That's definitely a big situation to say the least. Yeah. I think we could move a little bit forward into the story now, because that's happening during the North Carolina trip before Chris actually goes and sees everyone. But now, when they're back, apparently they have like a good talk. They hash it out. Everything seems to be going better now. Shannan goes on this business trip to Arizona. She actually also leaves a letter. Now, the letter was like entailing how she really missed their old relationship, how she loves him, and things like that, and things like that. Now, apparently, Chris just like nonchalant. He had like no reaction to that. Uh, so this is happening on August 9th. Now let's move 2 days in advance to August 11th. Now Chris hires a babysitter, and while the babysitter is watching Bella and Cece, Chris obviously goes to like the Sleeping Dog or something like that, which was a restaurant, and he goes there with Nicole Kessinger. And now Nicole Kessinger and Chris pay for their meal, which was over $60, with, I believe, Chris's like Chris's and Shannan's mutual credit card, where Shannan can access the payments as well. So I believe she saw that there was like $60 spent on this like restaurant, and then she obviously I think got suspicious because like for one person like $60 is too much. And then I think Chris said that I think they had like a chat uh, on Messenger or something like that, and then Chris said like I just had like a beer and like some food. But then, like, I think it was pretty obvious that he was eating with someone else. Whatever. 2 days after that, now this is the day. This is the day, August 13th, 2018. That's the time is 1:48 a.m. Shannan returns from the business trip, and this is where I think we should get into the various CCTV footages. So yeah, so this is where things will happen. Now we can see Shannan walking up the house. Now you see that other Nicole person who was on the business trip actually left her there. And yeah, so she just goes back in, and she's gonna die shortly after this. Now Nicole, the other Nicole, not the Nicole Kessinger, just walked away, and the Shannan entered the house. So I think to keep it pretty brief. Let's. By the way, this is also a good CCTV footage. So for everyone who's listening to this podcast, not on our YouTube channel, I mean, as always, you could always jump in because we are right now seeing how like we're seeing a lot of very interesting stuff. So. Yeah, I think, dude, how should we handle this? I don't think we should go with what Chris actually told everyone that happened. I think we should actually go with what really happened, because I think there is a mystery here. So to keep it brief, right? The next,
Yeah.
I just want to keep it brief. What the fake story was, and then we could immediately jump to the real story, because I think there's like a good 10% of people who may not actually be familiar with this case. So let's just quickly for them keep it brief. Chris actually apparently stated, because after this night both the girls and Shannan were missing, and a whole situation ensued with police, and everyone's trying to figure out where they went. And Chris' story was that they had like this big argument, and that Shannan took the girls, and they just sort of left, and they left him, and things like that. So that was his story, but in reality, that was not the case. So I think we could jump to what actually happened in reality. So in reality, right, this is a crazy story. Apparently, Shannan and Chris at that point hadn't had like sexual intercourse for a while because Chris was just not interested anymore. But on this night, they did apparently have sexual intercourse. Do you have like that's correct, right, man?
Yeah, that's what he said. I think they must have had some evidence of that. I don't. Yeah, I don't see why he would have made that up. But yeah, and then I don't mean to laugh, but
Yeah.
it's ironic or disturbing what happens right after that or within a couple hours.
I think we could immediately jump to that. So I guess his story is that he wakes Shannon up, or they both wake up, some situation like that happens, and he tells Shannon that he's not interested in having this relationship anymore. They should get a divorce, and things are just not working because I don't know if I think he disclosed his relationship with Nicole Kessinger at this point, but according to his story, Shannan tells him, I knew it. I knew there was another woman or there was someone else, and you will never see the girls ever again. And after Shannan tells Chris that you will never see the girls again, he then proceeds to strangle her. Now, this is a point of contention, in my opinion, because Chris doesn't have any physical marks, injuries, etc. on him, and Shannan seemed like a pretty strong person, like a pretty strong woman, like independent, strong woman. And it seemed to me like if that was the case, I think she would have definitely left at least like scratch marks or and things like that on Chris. So I think the point of contention for me personally is whether or not Chris, because we know that Chris killed Shannan, that's like a fact, but whether it happened while Shannan was actually awake and they had that big argument, or did Chris have sex with Shannan? They sleep for a while. Now Chris wakes up, but Shannan is still sleeping, and he surprises her and starts choking her, avoiding any sort of physical damage that could have entailed from such an encounter. So, what are your thoughts, dude?
Yeah.
What do you
No,
think happened? Yeah.
it's interesting because until you mentioned it to me tonight, it never occurred to me. But yeah, it makes more because yeah, you're right. Like, and in fact, thinking about how he would do it, because like you said, it's like an ambush attack, where say she's asleep, and then he's like, "All right, now's the time," and he pulls like a sleeper hold, like a rear naked choke or something from behind, which is really hard to defend against, and if you're not ready for it, someone can knock you out pretty close to instantly, right? Like you'll be so you wouldn't even be able to get at them because a lot of times, like under his scenario, which by the way, there's no indications this guy ever lost his temper like this, or any other kind of physical abuse or violence. There's no record of him ever his whole life. His whole life, he had no history. I mean, like if you were talking to people who knew me, like I've definitely had some physical eruptions in my life. That doesn't say I've like abused my family or anything, but like I've there have been things that happened where I put my hand through walls when I was a teenager and things like that. Like like, and that's the case for a lot of other guys as
Dude,
well and
that's
other
like
people.
literally like
Yeah.
a monthly occurrence on my end, dude.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? So that was actually the notable thing about him when they interviewed his mom. I mean, people would say, "Oh, well, well, that's just his mom saying it." But no, like I think other people would have come and said, if they used to say he used to beat the crap out of me every day at school, that never happened. So like this guy was actually known for being super calm and, like you said, pretty meek in the relationship. And honestly, I kind of, given the other stuff we know about what happened, I kind of find it hard to believe that he was suddenly so outraged about losing access to these kids, which we didn't really seem to care about anymore, frankly, given what we know
Yeah.
happened after this. So, yeah, your thing makes sense, where it's like, how else would he not have these like scratches on his face and like, like, or on his arms or something, from someone who's trying to keep, if he'd come from the front and wrapped
Yeah.
his hands around her. But even if he had put his hands around her neck, if he did it from behind, it's much harder to get at somebody who's behind your back. You know what I mean? Like, it just think
Yes.
about it.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, I mean, unless you're trying to gouge their eyes out, but if they know what they're doing, and he's like a big strong man, um, and she's probably not used to defending a rear naked choke. So
Exactly.
yeah, that,
Also, yeah, to that point, I just want to add the fact that she was pregnant, and I think she was like 15 weeks pregnant. So I would assume that a pregnant woman would have an even stronger inclination to defend herself if she knew that it was happening beforehand. You know what I mean? Because she's not only protecting her life, she's also protecting Nico Lee's life. You know, their unborn son's life. So I
yeah.
feel like that would even enhance her protective nature at that point. Now, that happens. The interesting part is that one of the kids, I believe it was Bella, she was 4 at that point. She was the older sister. She was the older one. You know, Cece was the younger one. She was only 3, but Bella was 4, and Bella actually comes and asks what's wrong with Shannan, because Shannan, I believe, was face down, lying on the wall, and she was already strangled. So I believe Chris says something along those lines. Everything's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be okay. And yeah, and actually, from this footage that we are seeing right now, we can actually that we have been looking at for a while. This is like the CCTV footage from a neighbor's house. Now, as you can see, I'll just bring my mouse in really quickly. There is this is these are the vehicles of the neighbor, but this vehicle is Chris's vehicle, and I believe he strategically placed his vehicle sort of in this area so that he could bring in Shannan's body from the other side of this vehicle so that he would not get captured on camera. And he wrapped Shannan's body in blankets, I believe, and left it in the car. And then he also got the girls to sit in the car as well. So do you think that this was a strategic move to place the car right at this position?
Yeah, I agree. I think so. And even harkening back to when you said he paid for that meal with a credit card, someone else pointed out in, I think, one of the sources I looked at, that up until that point he had paid for everything with untraceable stuff from like gift cards. So it was like, it wasn't, you know what I mean? It was like, oh well, I bought a gift card for work or for my mom, whatever it was. So it's deniable. But like the timing of him using something where it was like, dude, I just don't even give a,
Yeah,
I don't even care anymore. I'm not even gonna do this farce anymore. Like, it's premeditated. Like,
yeah.
he knows he's gonna do this, right? So yeah, yeah. I think it's just, it's interesting though. I wonder. So do you think he saw the neighbor's camera and he's like, oh, this is gonna get around it, or do you mean just like, I know I'm gonna be carrying at least one body from the house, so like, let's make it real easy to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting, but I think he may have knew about. You know, that's the thing with Chris. He seems really dull and not the smartest person in the world in the interrogations. But then you look at all of this stuff and you question. Like, Chris is definitely a mysterious person, to say the least. Like, he's not. I think he's not as straightforward as one may think, because he's definitely out here like being really deceptive. I think one other question is, now the story goes that, and I think at this point we could like quickly pause the video that we will return shortly to, and go back to the Google Earth. Now, as I've said, this is the Vats family house, right? And yeah, definitely, like those other homes, like they moved literally on their own, because as we can see, like there are homes right now here, but on the street view these homes are missing. So like literally, like Chris Watts destroyed the neighborhood, not just his family at this point. Now he apparently gets the girls in the car, and according to his story the girls are still alive at this point, but Shannan is dead, and Shannan is like on the floor of of their truck, and the girls are like literally sitting next to it, and the girls don't know what's happening. They're like 3 and 4, and he drives everyone to this oil site where he worked at. I believe this was like a good 45-minute drive, and I think how he said it, he drives here, he digs a grave for Shannan, buries Shannan, and then he returns back to the vehicle. Now the girls are still alive, and if I'm not mistaken, he firstly kills um kills Bella. Uh, wait. No, I'm sorry. Apparently, he firstly kills Celeste, the younger one, which is, I think, if you're trying to be strategic here, you'd probably try to kill the older child first, because, the younger child would pose less of a threat, or like a runaway threat. But apparently, he kills the younger one first, and then I think he dumps the body in one of these barrels. We have two barrels here, and then he returns back to his vehicle. And I think Bella says, "Is this gonna happen? Is the same thing gonna happen to me that happened to CC?" Because apparently he literally killed CC in front of Bella. Like he put a blanket over CC, killed her, like smothered her, and Bella saw the whole thing. Then he goes, dumps Cece's body in the tanker, comes back, and then smothers Bella. Bella, apparently, the last thing that Bella said to Chris was, "Daddy, no," something like that. And apparently, Chris says that last word haunts him every day right now. Not sure how credible that is, but at least that's what he's saying. And yeah, he smothers Bella as well, and dumps Bella's body in one of the crude oil tanks as well. So I don't know, dude, what do you make of this whole situation? I mean, firstly, I want to just ask you a question, because I know you might want to go on a tangent potentially. So I just wanna ask you a question as well. Maybe you will want to answer it. Do you think that maybe, like, why would he kill the girls in the oil site? Wouldn't it make more sense to kill them inside of the house? Because I mean, a 4-year-old, I mean, that child could probably alert someone or escape. I know it was like the middle of the night, but still, I mean, it doesn't really seem like a super premeditated situation. Like it almost seemed like, if this was the case, that he killed them on the oil side, that he was just winging it, if you know what I mean, not necessarily super premeditated.
Yeah, it's like a mixture of. By the way, the only reason why I laughed was like my head was about to explode. So you sort of defused me a little bit because I was gonna very likely go on some kind of crazy rant, because the whole thing is just so frigging sickening. And I mean, obviously, this isn't like a controversial opinion. I mean, the whole thing is just so appalling that someone could do that. That I mean, thank goodness this is a somewhat rare thing that happens, when it happens at all. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It just seems like he's sort of improvising, and I have a little theory that I'll tap into at the end, but I'm not entirely confident. Well, a like that he's a sane person, or is even like has a normal IQ, but B, I don't know if he actually intended on staying alive at this point. If that makes sense.
Oh yes, This makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So that was, I mean, supposedly Grande mentioned this. Dr. Grande mentioned that he had said that one of his plots originally was to sort of like build some big explosion at the
Yeah.
oil site and like maybe destroy his own and his family's bodies in it. But he was worried that like maybe one of his coworkers would get injured or hurt having to help deal with that or put it out. And it's funny. It's interesting. Grande thought that was strange that he would care about these coworkers but not his family. But I don't really find I don't find that entirely strange because I think in his mind, his coworkers never did anything to him. Not that his kids did anything to him, but like at that point, this is sort of something that comes from these family murderers. Sometimes, like you love your family so much, you like want to. It's a strange idea of preserving them, preserving everybody together. So, like the wife, obviously, he has a bone to pick with, but and the kids, it's like, well, we're all going to go down together. But then, I could understand how, in a strange way, it's almost like you don't care about those employees enough to do that to them, or you do care about them enough that like you're like, hey, you had nothing to do with this, so why should I do this to my employer? But then he puts their bodies in the friggin' oil tanks. So like I don't understand, for the whole plot to work, those bodies were going to turn up at some point. It's really stupid. Like the whole thing, and it's not. I'm not trying to like help a murderer, but the whole thing is so foolish that you're like, this is almost bound to fail. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, the freaking oil tanks are not meant to have corpses in them, right? So this is a major flaw in his hiding the
Yeah.
evidence plan. And then by the way, and then when his confession at some point, Grande mentions this again when he's being questioned. He says supposedly there's this one scene where he's getting questioned by the cops and he's being questioned, by reporters and stuff, and he's sort of swaying back and forth like a little kid lying in front of the teacher. Um, but he says inside he was laughing, because he was like he had gotten rid of her body and he'd gotten away with it, or he had done this thing. So it's like this really twisted. You can't tell what narrative to believe because he's a liar and he's clearly not sane. But yeah, I mean it's very strange, and without dragging this out too much longer, I do have kind of like a little theory at the end I'll touch on just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, so basically what happened next is, the footage that we're seeing right now of the oil site, well, this is actually this footage had been taken apparently before he confessed, as he was in the interrogator's room. And how that worked, well, this was the same oil field that he worked at, and he was a main suspect immediately after the reports of the girls missing went down. And so yeah, they were checking the whole situation. And it's interesting how they immediately, almost like the drone operator almost immediately knew where to focus on, because literally in one of these two tankers there's Bella and in the other there's Cece, and there's also a blanket somewhere lying down in this field. I think we already saw a glimpse of it earlier. And yeah, I mean, the blanket pretty much was the same blanket that Shannan was wrapped in. So it's it's a crazy situation. And I think he confessed pretty much right in time, but he confessed to a different story. Initially he said that saw uh, he saw Shannan killing the girls, and then he killed Shannan because, according to his story, Shannan killed the girls because she was mad at Chris, because Chris was cheating. But we now know that that's a false story. Shannan definitely seemed like the type of a mother who wouldn't hurt her children. So that didn't make any sense. So yeah, somewhere around here Shannan is also buried. So this is the area where he left them. And I think we could jump probably to the surveillance, to the body cam. I don't know, the body cam to the body cam of the police officers who were responding to the missing call that the girls are missing. As you can see in the red shirt, I believe this is maybe like the son of Nicole. This is Nicole, not Nicole Kessinger, but the Nicole that Shannan went on that business trip and whatever, and the whole situation will ensue. Now it's a super long body cam footage, so we don't necessarily have to react to it. Yeah, you want to mention something?
Yeah, maybe it's just to let it roll while we talk about it real
Exactly.
quick. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was talking about, my wife was asking, what are you doing tonight? What's the show about? And I was telling her the topic, and I was watching some stuff today, obviously prepping for it, and she's like, well, like what happened after, like how did they know she was missing? Like, did he report it? And I'm like, oh no, he tried to act, he tried to just blow it off and kind of act like nothing was wrong when, like, his wife and his kids were gone. And then finally his, the coworkers, like Nicole, are like, hey, where's your wife? Where's your kids? Oh, they left. They're somewhere. Oh, well, don't you think you should be worried? No, I don't know. That's probably fine. And like they were the ones that had to call the cops. And then, what's interesting is, and this is the thing that's real big on the Netflix documentary. Maybe this is like the good lead in. I think they show this in like the first 10, 15 minutes is, the cops go and they're like, oh, I noticed, your wife's missing, and, and their stuff's still there. Right. So for all this, like, oh, she left with the kids with their stuff. Well, like her clothes and everything are still in the house. And it's kind of like no sign that anybody packed up and left. Right. So, like the cops, and then he also told them that like they'd had some kind of argument,
Yeah.
so that right away got their radar going. And then they go to this neighbor's house. They're like, oh, your neighbor's got a camera. Do you mind? Why don't we just go over to the neighbor's house and see what shows up? And I mean, do you want me to just say what the neighbor said?
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
yeah,
the,
sure.
that one. So this was like the really interesting thing and all the footage is, they're in there and they're watching the neighbor's camera, and the neighbor's trying to be helpful, and then literally, and they're like in the neighbor's living room and they're watching the TV for the footage, and they're like, oh yeah, like somebody was moving something to a truck. Oh, it looks like you. So as soon as Chris leaves the room, the neighbor's like goes to the cop and he's like, hey man, something's way off here. Like that guy is not acting like his normal self. He normally does not act like that at all, and he's acting like super nervous, and something's way different about him right now. So like that's a good lead in, obviously, to the case. And really, I mean, if you look at his body language, Chris's body language, there's the neighbor, giving the spiel. um, when you look at Chris's body language, where he's like holding himself with his arms, he's doing like, I mean, there's like these kind of like classic tells that are a little bit of a stereotype. They're not always true, but there's often a lot of ways you can tell when someone's being deceptive or they're nervous about something. And he's kind of doing, you see, he's just like swaying back and forth. I mean, it's, if it wasn't so horrible, it would almost be hilarious what a bad job he does of covering up for his crime. I mean, here's something that while we're rolling, I kind of wanted to mention to you is we've seen this a couple times, right?
Yeah.
Where someone's done something that I thought right away of Jennifer Pan. So remember our Jennifer
Of
Pan
course.
case where
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
noticed like, she did this whole freaking premeditated crime, with all these moving pieces, and then she falls just like him. She falls apart in like the first, couple interviews she has, and it's like, look, I think there's going to be a couple moments like this, but maybe this is a good
Of
place
course.
for it
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
anybody that's listening to us, whatever's going on in your life. If you ever even consider doing something like this, please understand. Please understand that you do not have the will to do it. You have the will to do it, but you don't have the will to see it through. It won't, even these people, no joke, even some of the worst war criminals and people that were like in death squads and death camps and people, from like, World War II and all these other atrocities, even they had nightmares and regretted what they did. Even the worst of the psychopaths, people that were hardened soldiers or, did battles, even people that thought they were doing it for righteousness, even they regretted the horrible things that they've done. So someone like this, I mean, it makes it very obvious they haven't really thought it through. They don't realize that you are going to have. It's not just doing the act or
Yeah.
doing like a little bit of cover up. There is like this marathon of lying and covering up and acting, and he's just not a good actor. Like he's, I think, maybe you realize it. Don't you? Do you think that at some point, probably like a day in, he really regretted what he did? Like he kind of said, "Gosh, even from a even if he didn't love these people and love his family, even from a this is really hard and I don't think I can do it and I'm going to have to face the consequences." Don't you think at some point he just was like, this was
Um.
totally stupid?
Yeah, but to that point, I want to bring it back to you immediately. Do you think that this was a situation where he legit tried to just start a new life with Nicole Kessinger? Because why would he bury them literally at the place where he worked? Like, there's no way of hiding that. Like, why not get a divorce? Like, there was like, just get a divorce. You'll see your
Yeah.
kids. You'll just get like
Well,
half shared custody. Like you or whatever. You're gonna see your kids. So what the hell?
I'm glad you brought it up, especially because we're like you said, we're in the last 10 yards of the show here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, so here's the one thing I got to be careful how I say this because once again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm on his side or justifying this because like on the show I've gone on the record as
Nah.
being really anti-divorce, right? But
Yeah.
I think I would say, look, in this case, for sure have the divorce. Please don't kill somebody over your relationship. I mean, here's the other thing is like let's suppose um this had come as a result of some kind of argument or whatever. I think honestly, he would have. If, let's suppose they had the divorce, they got separated. I think he would have ended up back with Shannan. I think that thing with the other Nicole, the fair Nicole, would have worn off. I think it was a fleeting thing. I think that like probably whatever problems cropped up would have cropped up. Now, the one caveat I have for this is because of what's happened with when people get divorced and some of the dirty tactics that both spouses might use, but the way that potentially someone can wreck your life with false accusations. So there's a very famous person that whose name I'm not going to mention, because it gets once again controversial about whether you believe the accusations or not. But people's lives get ruined when vengeful spouses start making accusations that may or may not be true about maybe touching the children or other things, like inappropriate stuff that gets into like legal territory. And what I think is unfortunate is someone can really ruin your reputation. And I have to wonder if that at all was like on the horizon. So when someone does something like this, is it that they're so worried that their life's going to be ruined and that they're going to be kind of paying for it with having to deal with this person being alive, which it's still illogical, right? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't justify it. But this person thinking, gosh, I'm going to be so embarrassed in front of my peers and my family. She's going to be on social media. I mean, she's making social media stuff about energy bars. Every moment of her life's going to be on social media because it's her job. So
Yeah.
admittedly, there's a reason. But is he like, gosh, is she going to be out there saying I'm like, I did this and I did that? Is she going to take my kids away from me? Which, like, we don't know that he really cared about that, but someone else might. Like, there's enough stuff where I could see how somebody in the heat of the moment could be mortified at like a really shy person like this doesn't really like to be, in the spotlight. That's where I kind of wonder
Mm.
as far as that motivation. And then the other thing that I was alluding to earlier is, I mean, I just hope that maybe you're never in this situation where stuff is going wrong in your life where you get by the way, this has been one of the episodes where I have tried the hardest to not curse. I have wanted to curse a blue streak and call this guy every name in the book and say all sorts of bad words, but I don't want us to get some kind of maturity rating, and I'm trying to not
Yeah.
offend the
Let's not
sensibilities.
do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I'm really trying. I've got to stick my fist in my mouth because it's so hard. I get so angry with this thing. But I will say that, like, sometimes your life can get really, things can go really badly. And I could see how somebody could get in sort of a like I don't give an F anymore. I don't give it, I don't care
Yeah.
about myself anymore, and start doing some really, unfortunately, in the heat of the moment, kind of alternating between doing things that don't make sense at all and doing things that are kind of future looking. But to your point, yeah, like he doesn't. But we saw this also with this is very similar. When Dr. Grande was breaking it down, he was kind of comparing this to like other family murders and stuff. It's similar in some ways to Scott Peterson in terms of like, unlike a lot of other family murderers, where like a lot of the other family murderers, they did it because the wife was having an affair. He said if he had to bet, like if someone was having an affair, it would be the wife, and the husband was angry. But no, like in the case of this, and I think Scott Peterson, the husband who's having the affair tries to like basically erase his wife, and like once again, like that wife was pregnant too. Okay, so that's interesting. He doesn't show a lot of the other like kind of violent histories of like substance abuse and or, physical abuse and other kind of erratic signs of psychopathy that some of these other people do. It is
Mm.
interesting that it's also similar to John List. So the financial pressures. So somebody who had already faced, in this case, already faced massive financial pressures, is sort of like almost deciding to erase their family and start over,
Yeah.
or not face that shame, though the kids aren't really old enough to understand it yet. And then finally, I couldn't, because the mother mentioned that he was kind of his own mother mentioned that, well, he was a really good teenager and never got in trouble. She always saw him as immature, and I get, like I said, I kind of wondering if they almost thought of him as like mentally handicapped. But that reminds me of Casey Anthony. So Casey Anthony had always been very immature and very irresponsible, and unfortunately, in her case, they kind of thrust the responsibility situation on her, which backfired massively. It almost makes me think it was the same kind of thing where they
Mm.
almost
Yeah.
saw this disaster kind of coming. Yeah.
Right.
So I that's a big long burst of thoughts about it, but it's kind of what I synthesized over
It's
watching.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. You've linked all of these interesting cases, and I think you could definitely find familiarities with all of them in the Chris Watts case. Now, just to throw it back a little bit, I have two more points before we close off the show. I sort of entailed that one piece of footage that I found very peculiar and very curious, and I'm sure you don't know what I'm talking about, or maybe you do, but I'll find out. Before that, just without stopping here for too long, one of the other mysteries here for me personally was, let's because this doesn't make any sense. Like starting a new life, just get the divorce, dude, and you seemed super happy with Nicole, so just have your fun with Nicole, divorce Shannan, and do your thing. Like your parents already don't like her, and vice versa. So who cares anymore, right? Just get a divorce. Why do you have to kill everyone? Now, the one thing I found pretty mysterious is, do we know for a fact that Chris Watts had not killed anyone else in his life? Could it be a situation where Chris had already killed people? Maybe he's like potentially like schizophrenic, but in a sense that it only comes up very like rarely. And is it, in your opinion, is it completely out of the question that maybe Chris Watts has more bodies, if you know what I mean?
I mean, the way that he seemed to like turn it on and off is pretty scary. It makes you wonder if that's in a lot of us. And the only thing is, I don't really see any other. I mean, he would have been had to have been really crafty about hiding it, because a lot of times people that do that stuff, they've kind of had like a practice run of like maybe killing animals or at least some kind of violence in their past, where
Yeah,
like they work their way up, and like nothing's come out. No one's ever been like, you know he tried to date rape me or something like that. Like none of that's ever come
yeah,
up. But like, meanwhile, there has been some rather crafty behavior, even to the point of him pursuing Shannon for this kind of marriage, and kind of almost sounds like he kind of really made it happen, right? So it seems like when he's got
yeah.
his mind set on something, his poor feeble mind, when he wants something, he gets it. So it makes you
Right.
wonder, did that ever happen before and we just didn't hear about it?
Yeah, exactly, dude. And now I think it's time to jump to that one piece of footage. And it's apparently like we're gonna be jumping to some paranormal stuff right now because you would think that there's nothing paranormal going on in this case, but there is. Okay, so right now we're watching a footage. This is just a clip, right? From I think they showed this on the Netflix show and on TikTok. This went live, and apparently we can see from this footage the ghosts of one of the girls. I know this is, this is a crazy turn of events for this podcast, but just as a closing thought, I just had to leave this in there because this is crazy. And I think some people in our audience may have some sort of a stronger sentiment towards the paranormal. I think just for them, yep, as we can see, like I think this area right here, dude, I don't know if you can see it, but apparently there was no one else in the house besides Nicole, police officer, I believe Nicole's son, and Chris. And we see this. Okay, so we don't know what that is, but that was maybe because look, no one's wearing the same shirt. No one's wearing the same shirt as what we see here. But before I let you react to it, we have even a better angle. Just keep looking at this area. Keep looking at this I guess room. Look. Someone's gonna peek out. Look. It's not a police officer. Like, so
That's
there
weird.
was a hand. Like there's clearly a hand
Or
there.
like a little kid or something. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's.
Exactly. Like look,
Ooh,
that's
yeah,
a
that
kid.
is.
That's a kid. I believe. Look, I will. First of all, I just want to see what I see, and then I will ask what you see. Right here. Crap! It moved. Wait for it. Let's wait for it. Right here, I see a girl. I see this as her hair, and I see maybe a dress. I don't know, dude.
Oh, and see, once again, maybe it's like the Rorschach a little bit. To me, I mean, like I said, it might just be the size of the screen I'm looking at. To me, I feel like I see an arm or
Oh yeah,
something.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Like the side of somebody, like somebody kind of just barely standing into the swaying in and out of the doorway.
Yeah.
Wow, that's weird. It's kind of spooky. So like they're the only ones there. You're
Yeah.
saying just those four
No,
people?
yeah, there
Wow.
was no one there. So I don't know, maybe someone in the comments has something else for us, but yeah,
Yeah.
there was a like almost like a child's body there. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think this is a good place. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess since we're wrapping it up, I mean, I'll tell you the other thing is, I mean, I guess it goes without saying, but when you see just how nice, not that it would have been any worse or better, but like his children were seemed like such nice little girls, really good natured, and they love their dad and they love their mother, and I just it really blows my mind that especially someone that didn't show signs of being some horrible, like abusive parent, could suddenly just turn it off like that and go into, I guess, psychopath mode or, death squad mode and just do that to their own families. I mean, even those death squad people wouldn't do it in their own families, you know? I mean, even people like Stalin and, horrible, horrible people like that, they love their children. Saddam Hussein
Stalin didn't get his son back from one of the German death camps, I believe. He was like just dying there.
Really? I can't
Yeah,
remember. Did you ever see the Death of Stalin? You ever see that movie?
I
It's a
don't
good
think so.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a daughter. He has a daughter. His daughter.
Well,
He never
he
trusted
liked
that.
yeah, he liked the daughter, but his son was like a pilot and he got captured, but he didn't put any effort into
Come back.
getting. Yeah.
Okay, well maybe I'm wrong about Stalin. Saddam Hussein for sure loved his children, but like look what a monster he was. So, yeah. Anyways, I can't even imagine. It does make you wonder if there's really. I don't know if we really have to wonder it. It does seem like there really is something wrong with him. There was something wrong with his behavior. It'd be interesting to know if maybe he had some kind of tumor develop or if something else was going on because his behavior is just beyond callous. beyond appalling. I don't know how this guy can live with himself in prison, and how apparently he's like pretty delusional now and still says he's a father and like reads to like a picture of his child, and it just, that sounds like somebody who's lost their mind. Yeah, I don't understand how we can even go on day to day.
Exactly, dude. Yeah. Um, I agree, dude. I think it's a good time for us to close it because I don't think we have anything else in particular to mention. I think you've wrapped it up really well in terms of, Chris being insane potentially right now. I think we covered all of the interesting points, and I think all of the main mysteries here, because this case is mysterious. Even though we know what happened, we don't really know necessarily how it happened, and then maybe there's some sort of a paranormal situation going on as well. I mean, this is just crazy. I mean, yeah, I'm very excited for the comments as always to see maybe what the audience members think of this case. Yeah, guys, I mean, I know that this case was long overdue. I think if we're gonna have a true crime podcast, we have to have this case. I mean, this is up there with Delphi. It's on the same level, I would assume. So yeah. Thank you guys for joining us this week. Join us next week. I think we already have a really nice mystery picked for next week. Yeah, so we'll see how that whole situation goes down. And yeah, just as always, stay safe and peace out.